Welcome to Tracing Your Family Roots. I'm Janell Blue, president of the Mount Vernon Genealogical Society and also the sponsor of this program. Our guest today is Ronald Chase. He's the founding director of the Gum Springs Museum here in Alexandria. And perhaps you've seen the Gum Springs sign as you travel down Richmond Highway, but didn't know very much about it. And so today we are fortunate to be able to have someone who is the resident historian and also a descendant of an early settler there. And so welcome, Ron.
Thank you, Janell.
You're welcome. Thank you for being here. I understand that Gum Springs is the oldest African American settlement or community here in the Fairfax County area. And I think your viewers would really enjoy hearing more about the history. But first, let's just tell them where it is. And we have just a map. We'll show you where it sits within Fairfax County. And you can see the star there, and that is Gum Springs Community. It's about 214 acres originally, I believe.
Correct.
And so you can see that it's right there on Richmond Highway, south of Alexandria City. Ron, how did the name get started?
Well, interesting name. In Washington's day, the area was actually, the farm was originally called Willow Springs.
Okay.
For the many willow trees that were in the area.
Uh-huh.
However, George Washington used to refer to the area as Gum Springs, or he would say to people, "I'll meet you at the Gum Spring." There was a large gum tree near the intersection of Richmond Highway and Old Mount Vernon Road, and a freshwater spring. So he would tell people, "I'll meet you at the Gum Spring."
Aha, and it stuck.
It stuck because of Wes Ford, the enslaved individual that is said to be George Washington's son.
Okay.
He actually took the name, embraced it, and said, "That's the name that my father called the area." And so when he purchased the land, he called it Gum Springs.
Uh-huh.
He just switched the willow to gum.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about Wes Ford and how he came to develop that land and own the land?
Well, as I stated, he is said to be the son of Washington, and that is somewhat of a controversial element right now.
Now, is that George Washington or George's brother or nephew?
He is said to be George Washington's son.
Okay.
Mount Vernon disputes this, and they feel that he may be Bushrod Washington's son.
Okay, all right.
However, what was passed down in Wes Ford's family, what his mother told him, and then what was passed on further was that General Washington was his father.
All right, okay.
And so Wes Ford, he eventually he was born in Westmoreland County, and he eventually came to Mount Vernon. And the family has history of Wes Ford as a child going to church with George Washington. And Mount Vernon, they basically has dated a certain time of Wes Ford not coming there until after George Washington's death.
Yeah.
But again, what was passed down in his family was that he used to go on outings. General Washington would retrieve Wes Ford and take him to church with him and take him on outings. And,
well, go ahead. They must have had a pretty special relationship because it seems like Wes Ford was treated differently than what you hear other slaves might have been treated.
Correct. He received preferential treatment. Bushrod Washington's mother had in her will that upon Wes Ford's 21st birthday, he was to be inoculated with smallpox and then given his freedom. And also they gave him land. They gave him property. A few years later, he sold the land and then purchased Gum Springs.
Mm-hmm. So that was really quite an advantage to be able to have that gift of land. He must have been special to the Washington family to do that.
Well, of course, you look at for what it was during that time period. They gave him land, and what, in addition, made it special was that he was able to purchase land. Mm-hmm. He was able to purchase within the construct of society. The sheer fact that he was able to buy 214 acres in 1833 Virginia was a miraculous thing.
Yes. You know, we actually have a slide that has a picture of Wes Ford. If we can put that up so our viewers can see.
Now, he's actually 33 in
this picture.
And I find it kind of interesting. Mount Vernon just recently released a photograph of the individual they thought was Wes Ford. However, I told the librarian who made this discovery that the picture they recently released, the picture's been around for a long time, and they pulled this one individual from the picture and said that was Wes Ford. Now, Wes Ford was noted for his appearance. He always wanted to look his best because he was fearful of how he was being, or how black people were being portrayed. Mm-hmm. And so this guy that they just recently released, he was unkept, his hair was unkept, and then his facial features were totally opposite of what we know, or the pictures that we had of Wes Ford, what he actually looked like. Wes Ford had somewhat of feminine features, and matter of fact, that picture, a lot of people think he's a woman. And
oh, really?
Yes. I guess it depends on the publication they're looking at it from, because I never had that problem, but some people felt that he resembled a woman because of his delicate
features.
Yes.
Do you know the provenance of that particular picture? Do you know where it came from?
Actually, it's in a publication. You mean this one here, the one that we're looking at?
It's at the library, but I wonder where it
originated.
Came. Yeah.
They came twice to draw Wes Ford. Again, that one was commissioned by Mount Vernon, and then they came again when Wes Ford was much older. They had an individual to come, and I think he was in his 70s at that time. And again, his features are very, very small, very precise, not this block and squared off feature that this individual that they just recently submitted.
I see. So there's just constant controversy about all this stuff.
Well, as I always say, it within the passing of time, I think we will eventually know the truth regarding Wes Ford, because if you look at it originally, Mount Vernon used to say no, Wes Ford, there's no relation whatsoever to the Washingtons. Now they're saying, well, he's a Washington. We just don't know if he's George's son.
Yes. Okay. Interesting. Well, that happened in those days, didn't it? I mean, we know from Thomas Jefferson that those things happened. So, well, you were talking about the difficulty of African American owning land or being able to buy land at that time. Talk a little bit more about it. What were some of the obstacles that a person who was free, but free for what? What could they do? And what was he able to do that was different from what most African Americans who had been freed could do?
Well, as I stated, the sheer fact that he was able to purchase land in 1833 Virginia was quite a miraculous thing. And he started the community. He even allowed some people to come and start homesteading on his property. And then, of course, as the community started to grow, you had elements such as the Joint Stock Club, whereby these were individuals that came from the Bethlehem Baptist Church the first minister, who was Sam Taylor, a runaway slave that came from Caroline County, Virginia, and his deacons, and they started this company, if you will. They call it a club, but they started this company whereby they started purchasing property from the Ford family. They also purchased property along what is now the Washington Parkway. They purchased property along Fort Hunt Road. And the amazing thing about this is that they resold the property to blacks to help build the community. But they resold it at cost. They didn't increase the price of it. They were concerned about building a community for the blacks who were coming into the area.
So what era would that be? 1900, 1930?
No,
1880?
that was about that started around 1870, 1880,
Okay.
through that period.
Okay. Because I know in reading some of the material that it went from Ford and his 4 children all the way to 1,800 people in, what was it, 1880? 1889, I
Yes.
think, where there were 1,800 houses there. And so that's how it happened. Then that stock company helped to do that.
That stock company was truly an amazing thing. And then you look at the other elements, the other building blocks in regards to Gum Springs, the components that enabled it to be in continuum to present day. It started to bring and pull families. It started to create institutions. Bethlehem was the first institution, the first church. And sometimes I have to catch that, but it was the first legitimate institution because Gum Springs had a school in 1855. They burned it down, but it had a school, and it wasn't official. And it's been documented. They burned it down. Then Bethlehem became the church and school. And then not too long after that, they built another school in the early 1860s, and then that eventually became the Freedman School. And the Freedman School, then a few years after that, they built a Rosenwald School. And listen to what I'm saying as we go along. These elements that they're bringing together to build this community. And of course, the Rosenwald School, a lot of people know it by the Sears and Roebuck owner, Rosenwald. However, it was actually a Booker T. Washington project, and Rosenwald came on the scene to help in the financing of it. Now, the components were such that the community gave a certain amount of money, the Rosenwald Foundation gave a certain amount of money, and the county from which it was being built gave a certain amount of money. But the community was very progressive, and even from its inception, in that Ford purchasing this 1833 tract of land, truly an amazing story.
Yeah.
So you have the Joint Stock Company, you had the fraternal organizations coming into the area. Gum Springs had 4 fraternal organizations. It had the Friendlies, it had the Odd Fellows, it had the Elks, and it had the Masons. And of course, these organizations, the name of the game for them was to exist to reach out a helping hand. That was their motto, a helping hand to their neighbor. And this community had 4 of them. I can remember as a child, my father belonged to Odd Fellows and the Masons. And one of the Odd Fellows was in my home doing some plumbing work. And he was out there all day working. And he finished up, and my father said, "Oh, what do I owe you?" He said, "Oh, give me $1."
My goodness.
And I, as a child, I knew better. I knew it was worth so much more.
Right.
But it wasn't about his getting paid all the money for all the work that he had done. It was about helping one another. And he just said, "Give me $1."
Wow.
And we're good, because I'm going to need you for something. So this is the baseline. I mean, I have countless stories. the Rosenwald School, there was a Gray, John Gray, that lived right across the street from the Rosenwald School. And he had, I used to think, the first store in Gum Springs, but he actually had the second store. But he was quite an entrepreneur, and he had different businesses. But his wife would prepare all of the lunches for the kids at the Rosenwald School.
Wow.
And they would come over just across the street and have lunch. Or sometimes she would take it over there. But either way, it was a joyous time that for their lunch break when they had it. And his wife would give in that manner.
Now, we have a picture of an early picture of Bethlehem Church. It's not the very first one, but you said maybe it's like the third iteration, and it's not the one. It's still around though, right?
It's still standing. It's on Fairfax County's inventory of historical structures. I think it's a phenomenal building. I'm a little upset in regards to what happened there with the front of it. A car came in and destroyed the marquee and went right through the front part of that wall, and it ended up changing the roof line.
Oh my gosh.
See that double A-frame that's coming off the bell tower?
Yeah.
That wasn't there originally. And so it sort of threw off. I would love for it to, in the future, for it to come off and to be properly done in accordance to the design of the building. However, the building actually was built during the Great Depression.
Wow.
I mean, where did the community get the money?
Yeah.
To build this structure during the Great Depression? And then most of the superstructure on the building is built with dowels, not nails.
Oh yeah.
They use
I've
dowels.
heard of that.
Yes, so the whole front of it, the superstructure, and then the whole front of it is built with dowels. So the ingenuity, the craftsmanship that was presented within the community, and of course, it is said that most of that craftsmanship was acquired when they were working at Mount Vernon.
Mm-hmm. So now there's a large, beautiful church that's right there on the property.
That church was beautiful.
Oh no, I didn't mean that. I just meant that there's a big one now.
Yes.
And it's on the same property.
It's on the same property.
So are services still used in the older church, the historic church, or is it a museum?
Neither one of those questions are
Okay.
Unfortunately, the current administration is not using the church in either one of those capacities. However, hopefully that will change. Hopefully the current administration will see the tremendous benefit of that church being put to use, because there were two elements that I remember as a child. Of course, even before my birth, Bethlehem was the cornerstone of Gum Springs. Mm-hmm. And as you come along Sherwood Hall Lane and you're coming around the corner, there it sits like this jewel. Mm-hmm. There's a light hitting it.
Right.
And I think the entire area just loves the fact that that building is there. Now you have a brand new building sitting right beside it. Beautiful building.
Right.
However, the light hits that building and it is stunning. Skerlock, the famous black photographer, that building is featured in the Smithsonian collection of photographs that Skerlock took of that building. It's truly a phenomenal structure.
Well, and then you were talking about the education, and we do have a picture of Annie Smith, who you've got a portrait of her in the museum as well, and she's played a very important part in the lives of the community at that time too. Can you talk about her a little bit?
Truly, and unfortunately, that picture does not do her justice. She was a gorgeous lady. She was the first black school teacher in Gum Springs. She actually, when she first came to the area, she would walk from Gunston
Wow.
to Gum Springs.
How many miles would you say for our viewers?
Gunston?
10 miles?
Oh, no, much more.
More, yeah.
Yes. And she would walk. She eventually moved to Gum Springs, and she eventually married Wes Ford's grandson,
Right.
Dandridge Smith.
Right.
And they're actually buried in Gum Springs in it became her cemetery because where the Peak family home was, their cemetery is right in the back. And so she became the owner of that part of Gum Springs.
And where is that cemetery? Is it?
It's directly behind the community center.
Okay.
Yes. And the Peak family, they're there. Dandridge and Annie are there. And I actually believe some of my relatives are there because Annie had in her will that there are to be no more Browns buried in my cemetery. So we need to do two things. We need to do an identification of the graves that are there, and also just right off the embankment of the Peak Family Cemetery, there is a almost squared off area of periwinkle. And so the slaves, that's what they would always use to mark their grave areas, periwinkle. And at the slaves at the grave site at Mount Vernon, that entire area for the enslaved, periwinkle. Now,
what is periwinkle?
Periwinkle is a growth of
like a flower?
Evergreen, and it has these white flowers, and I think they have a purplish flower as well.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful. And the slaves, that's what they were noted for, to mark their area where the graves are. And then they would always bury close near water. And the same thing at Mount Vernon, the grave site of the enslaved is near water. And so the intent was so that their souls would find their way back to Mother Africa.
Ah, my goodness. Well, today you've got a community center, there's a park there, there's your museum. Talk a little bit about how that got started and what our viewers could enjoy today.
Well, once again, I get goosebumps when I always would think about the Joint Stock Club and what they did and why they did it. Mm-hmm. I get goosebumps because the community stayed in continuum with that concept. We had the principal of Drew Smith School, Saunders Benny Moon. When he came, he saw that the community was in need of the basic amenities. Because here you have Gum Springs, you have Mount Vernon, Woodlawn, Gunston, and Gum Springs is some of the oldest elements in the area, and everything is building up around it, and Gum Springs is being left behind. So he thought there was a need for a community action organization, and he was going to create it. Unfortunately, he probably burned himself out. He died suddenly one Christmas morning. Oh. But the community appreciated this individual such that they continued with his idea, named it for him, and they then set out to go after these elements that were missing in the community, like a community center. The Saunders B. Moon Action Association created that community center that's there now. They struck a deal with the county whereby they would rent that building for 100 years for $1 per year. And after that, upon acquiring the building, they then set out to provide these things. They built the new Gum Springs or Spring Garden Apartments. They got the Martin Luther King Park built with the pool and the tennis courts that are there. Yeah. A couple of things are missing. We're supposed to have an amphitheater as well as a boat dock. So we're working on that. And then they continue and started building these housing areas, Joseph Maple Court, Napa Road development, and also the Wes Ford. The Wes Ford development, that was a snafu. The county owns that, but eventually they need to I think, relinquish the ownership and fulfill the original agreement, which was to provide affordable housing for sale, because that was those other elements. But the community continued with this concept in providing these elements, these amenities to the community. The Head Start program, which is all over this nation now, you know where it started from?
Right there?
Right there.
Oh man, that's
At the
great.
Saunders B. Moon Action Association. First one in the nation.
Congratulations, that's amazing.
And then all of the programming that the county provides right now, a great percentage of it came from the Saunders B. Moon Action Association. So it has a wondrous, rich history. And unfortunately, it's been a struggle, and I think with this road widening that's occurring, Gum Springs is in jeopardy.
Uh-oh.
Yes. So we have to keep a close watch on everything, and I think even just recently, the community put a coffin out in the middle of the highway.
Oh dear. You know what, Ron, we are running out of time, and you might want to just tell our viewers, if they wanted to come to your museum, is it open every day, or what are the hours for that?
The museum is open every day except for Sunday.
Okay.
I would love for it to be open on Sunday. However, we sort of operate according with the rest of the community center that's there.
Well, again, welcome. Thank you so much. This has been very interesting, and I know our viewers are going to probably stop by to say hello to you. And I want to invite everyone to look into Mount Vernon Genealogical Society, mvgenealogy.com. .org, excuse me, and we have lots of programs. Go to our website and check us out, because we would love for you to visit or even become a member. So thanks again,
Could
Ron.
I throw in a quickie, Janelle?
Yeah.
We do also have a virtual tour for the museum. So if you just type in Gum Springs Museum virtual tour, you will get a bird's eye view of what we have to offer.
Oh, that's great information. I didn't find that, so great. I'm
Yes.
glad to get that.
Yes.
All right, thanks again.
Thank you.